British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has met with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. This is his second stop on his Middle East tour, which included a visit to Israel. Sunak is pushing for humanitarian aid to be delivered into Gaza as soon as possible.
We also recognize that the Palestinian people are victims of Hamas too. And that is why I welcome your decision yesterday that you took to ensure that routes into Gaza will be opened for humanitarian aid to enter. I'm glad that you made that decision. We will support it. We're increasing our aid to the region, and we will look to get more support to people as quickly.
Al Jazeera's Mohammed Jamjoom is in occupied East Jerusalem. Mohammed, you've been walking us through the ins and outs of this visit between Sunak and Netanyahu. Now Sunak is in Saudi Arabia. What does he hope to achieve on this tour?
First and foremost, Cyril, Prime Minister Sunak would like to attempt to de-escalate this conflict. It's one of the things that was high on his agenda in Israel. It's one of the things that he's been trying behind the scenes to get some kind of guarantee from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's not gotten any public guarantees from Netanyahu about that. But he's now gone on to Saudi Arabia. He is going to go, we are told, to Qatar and also to Turkey. In addition to Rishi Sunak, you also have UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, who will be accompanying Sunak on this whirlwind regional tour. Sunak wants there to be a humanitarian corridor. He wants to apply the kind of pressure that he can, to use the kind of levers that he has to try to get Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to agree not to strike the Gaza Strip while a humanitarian corridor is open. Now, as far as we know, it's tomorrow, it's going to be the earliest that these 20 aid trucks can actually get into the Gaza Strip. But as you were saying just a few moments ago, 20 trucks for a population of over 2 million, that's just a drop in the bucket. Sunak would like to see more aid getting through on a more regular basis. He also wants to make sure that British citizens that are trapped inside of Gaza can utilize that Rafah crossing and get out of Gaza and into Egypt. But first and foremost, even though he has continued to express solidarity with Israel, he wants more humanitarian aid going in. And that's the biggest thing he's trying to accomplish right now with this whirlwind regional diplomacy. Cyril?
Mohammed Jamjoom reporting live from occupied East Jerusalem. Thank you very much for all of that and setting up the conversation we need to have with Marwan Bishara. You're back with us, Marwan. Look, on the diplomatic front, we've seen a lot of movement over the last, I'd say, 36 hours. We saw Joe Biden in Israel. We saw Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, in Israel. Now Rishi Sunak in Saudi Arabia. And on the other side, we're seeing the King of Jordan in Egypt. I'm just wondering, what are you watching? What for you is a salient point that you think has material impact on the situation in Gaza going forward?
Look, I think President Biden has paved the way for what is and is not possible today in accordance to Washington's calculus. And I think everyone is just trying to paint his own corner along the way. But the way has been paved by the American president. The British Prime Minister, it saddens me to say, is simply walking in his footsteps, no more, no less. Of course, it's tomato. So he's doing it with an English accent, with a British accent. That's all it is. It's more of the same Biden, except with an English accent, with a bit of more English je ne sais quoi. In the sense that they would add a bit more language about the humanitarian, this and that. But in the end of the day, the parameters have been defined by Joe Biden. Prime Minister Sunak has no leverage whatsoever with Israel. And apparently, clearly nowadays, with the Palestinians, zero leverage. So all he can do is simply stress what President Biden did. Except the way he does it, it somehow comes out to be a counterfeit or a fake message. Because Biden delivered the original one, right? And now what we have is a bit of a counterfeit. European leaders trying to follow in the footsteps of the American president instead of charting their own way. Europe is a 500 million people continent. Europe has the biggest market in the world, even bigger than China and the United States. Europe is an economic power and a strategic power. UK and the EU should have been able to come together within their foreign policy outfits and be able to chart a new way in Israel-Palestine. But they don't. We have the German Chancellor doing his own song and dance, and then we have the British Prime Minister, and I think we're going to have the French President coming soon. They are divided and they are weak. They're not speaking in one voice. Even when the President of the European Commission came, she faced criticism from Paris because she went really all the way. She became more Zionist than Netanyahu. So really Europe and Britain is not playing the role that should have been assigned to them, that they should have assigned to themselves. They're following in the footsteps of the United States. And I think at the end of the day, they are not making much difference.
Marwan, you made me laugh with the tomato line. I'm not against a brief moment of levity in this war, so thanks for that. But more seriously, what about diplomacy among the Arab nations? Because the question of the Arab support for Palestinians, what they're actually willing to do for Palestinians, is one that has been enduring and that goes right back to the beginning of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So what do you make of that?
You know, the fact that the Jordanian, Egyptian, and the Palestinian leaders have basically canceled the summit with Biden, that was in and by itself a kind of a huge step forward for them, right? They even shocked the Arab public opinion. I don't know if you remember, but 1 hour before they did that, I was speaking on Al Jazeera here, and I was saying, you know, if they really had the guts, that's what they need to do. They need to walk out. They need to threaten to boycott, because if they do, you know, they could at least maybe try to impose a ceasefire. Well, anyway, they did. They did not get a ceasefire. But certainly it was a progress for them. But since then, they have condemned Israel's bombardment and its bombing of the hospital. That's also, you know, important, because these countries have normalized relations with Israel. Egypt and Jordan a long time ago, way before the Abraham Accords. But even countries that have normalized relations, and they were supposed to normalize relations, they are also condemning Israel. So we have a bit of a, you know, change of tone, change of policy, because of the heat, because of the pressure of the Arab public opinion. We've seen the streets and the squares of the Arab world erupt in protest against Israel and American support. So I think we have now the beginning of an Arab diplomacy to try and somehow deal with the crisis without being overly embarrassed, without being totally irrelevant, without facing more pressure from the Arab street. But when you focus on the details, if you heard, for example, President Sisi's press conference yesterday, the way he talked about, we don't want the Palestinians to come to Sinai, that's a good thing. But he said something about, you know, take them to the Negev desert in the south Israel, and then take them back to Gaza. You know, I mean, you expect the Egyptian president to say, we cannot take them in Egypt, they should go back to southern Israel, right? Because they are mostly refugees from southern Israel. So in detail, it's a bit problematic, but on the overall, there is progress in the stance of Arab leaders vis-a-vis the Palestinian questions, as if they have awakened.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. We'll have to keep watching that space then. Marwan Bishara joining us from London in this hour. Thank you very much, Marwan.